Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Korean Star League. It's your boy Nathanias, bringing you some Terran versus Protoss action. I heard that this week's KSL was really good, and based on the matchup that we are starting with in the bracket stage, feels like a pretty safe to call this one a W. One of my favorite players in the top left, the blue Terran player. He is Gumiho, GSL champion, all-around good guy, and a Terran innovator, and perhaps one of the greatest Terran innovators of all time. In fact, one of the most recent KSL broadcasts we've done, I basically pretty much only been doing his Thor build. I'm interested to see if he busts it out against this guy in the bottom right, one of my favorite Protoss players in the whole wiggity wide world. He is Astrea. So we have the NA versus Korea and the Korean Star League, of course, a weekly tournament with hundreds of dollars on the line for the top Korean players to duke it out. And of course, anybody brave enough to log on and battle them on their own server. I've been hearing that Astrea and Future have both been on that grind. I think someone was even telling me that Future was in Korea, and I was like, okay, well, obviously, if I don't have guaranteed confirmation of that, you know, I haven't spoken to him or asked him, but we've been seeing those guys do really well in a lot of these online cups. We've seen them taking games and occasionally even series off of some of the most terrifying players in the entire StarCraft ecosystem. So if you needed any more reasons to get excited about this match, I don't know. Maybe something cool will happen. I'll also add that. It is StarCraft 2. That does tend to happen. So TVP, as we know it in this map pool, it's almost always about the early aggression for the Terran. And look at this. Gumiho straight to the reactor after a single Marine. He sends an SCV to the corner, so I'm going to guess it's a Hellion drop. It's probably proxy the starport here. There it is. There it is. And there it is. Oh, he's waiting for 6 gas. Two more. There you go. Starport on the way. And I'm going to assume Hellions. So what he can do here is just rally the Hellions across the map. It's going to take him about as much time to get the starport up and running as it will to get 4 Hellions built. And then the medevac won't be too far behind. So Astrea, what is he doing? Twilight Council, Shield Battery in the natural, and no wall off in the main. The Sentry just kind of perusing the outside, trying to make sure that Gumiho's not floating in a factory or anything crazy like that. And Gumiho will expand behind it. It can be kind of risky to do builds like this if you get cheesed or if your opponent has any kind of early move out in mind. You don't have the Reaper to scout. You don't know anything at all about what Astrea is doing, but you're kind of just hoping that he'll play a straight up standard macro build. And that is what he's up against. It's a blink to follow this. So the hallucinated Phoenix from the Sentry can go in and see all of these things, but he doesn't really know what's coming. I think maybe not seeing a starport is kind of the indicator that your opponent should have one by now. But Astrea also hasn't put any pylons at the edge of his base. The other thing I was going to say is that this map can just be a little crazy because the bases are huge. The base is just so big. So the Hellions will unload well outside of his vision. Astrea is missing a huge chunk of vision in his base. And 4 Hellions will just cruise right on in, immediately vaporizing 10 probes and a little bit more off the top there. And look, Protoss, when they play economically, it's intrinsically designed that you can get a worker lead over the Terran, but the other side of it is that Terran is always going to be trying to hit you hard as a result of that. So, is Gumiho's natural a little bit later? Sure. Did he prioritize the tech a little bit more than the economy? Also sure. But his starport is almost home. His natural is done, and normally, if you were in a regular macro game versus Protoss and you didn't get any probe kills, I mean, if we just gave Astrea back all the workers that he lost, it would be 44 probes to 30 SCVs. He'd have almost a whole base of saturation over him. So this Hellion drop, bringing the economies, or the worker count rather, even is big. Obviously, the economy should just favor Gumiho because he also has mules. So if you're a Protoss player and you find yourself down on workers, a little bit of a supply block here. Actually, that siege tank not able to do much as it does clear up. But the Phoenix also getting to see that, kind of saying, I wonder if he's still asking himself where the starport is. Is it going to come back? I think the Observer's kind of looking for it, but there's nothing to find. So Astrea just sieges the Observer up outside of his base in case other drops come by, or a Liberator, Banshee, what have you. And here's what's really interesting. So Charge is the follow-up for Astrea. Now, Blink into Charge is not crazy. Neither is taking the third base. But because there's so many Hellions from the early game and they were all kept alive, I'm not as worried about Charge lots shutting down a two-base Marine tank push as I think I would normally be. He has a couple medevacs. He has the bio. Stim is about to finish. Combat Shield's almost done. I think the only thing you wish you could have with this is +1, but the engineering bay didn't come in very fast. And of course, when that main base is so big, Gumiho also has to consider the possibility that he, a warp prism or something comes in. So here's the move out. 2 stalkers are in the middle of the map. They're going to see this immediately, take a couple of shots at a medevac, at a marauder. He's playing around the line of sight blocker. Little brush in the middle of the map. You cannot see through them. Now, 3 stalkers with Blink cannot stop this army by any means, but he's just trying to poke, take a Marine here. If he were able to kill a Marauder, that would actually be really nice for him. But there's not much army to actually defend these 2 bases, and I think Charge lots could shut this down if there weren't the 4 Hellions, but maybe if the tanks expose themselves just enough and he's able to get a little bit of friendly splash fire from them. No tanks. Focus down the Stalkers. Stalkers will blink onto the tank on the north side. Bio continues to kite on the left. All of the Zealots have been melted down. 3 more get warped in, but it's not enough. And Gumiho takes game number 1. I cannot say it's a particularly surprising result after the Hellion drop. He just kind of swept the leg, and things got out of hand very quickly. So let's go to game number 2. See what happens here. Just see what's going on. In the top left, leading this series 1-0, the Korean Terran player, GSL champion Gumiho. Thank you, Mason, for the love. Currently facing off against the American Protoss player in the bottom right, Astrea. When I think about Astrea, or reasons why people should know him or care about him, in the grand history of StarCraft, he was one of the first American Protoss players that was starting to strike fear into the hearts of some of the international space. Even before the time, well, perhaps the completed rise of Neeb. I think one of my favorite photos throughout the years I took was with Astrea after he had a pretty sick series in DreamHack Valencia, 2017, if I recall. I think I was hosting that event. I think I was hosting that one. I remember we had I think that was one of the few events I've ever done with that Valdez guy. He was pretty funny. He was a pretty chill dude. But Astrea has kind of been one of those sleepers, you know? You don't see him come out and get the big championship, but in things like the online team leagues, he's been one of those guys that takes out the Korean players, especially when you need just that best of one weird build. Astrea's kind of classically been a creative Protoss, and to some degree that used to mean that he was a little aggressive, and then in other ways it meant that he was greedy. And then it just kind of diluted down into, well, he can kind of just do anything, but he has his own way that he likes to do stuff. You'll see Astrea play, and eventually you watch him play enough games, and you can just start to pick his replays out. You could be like, oh yeah, this is an Astrea thing. Oh, we've got the guy trying to be super greedy in PvP, but he still wants to follow up into just a normal composition. He's not doing it to do some other weird build. Okay, yeah, that's probably Astrea. And if they do something really weird, then you're like, oh yeah, well that's probably Hero. You know, there's not a lot of weirdness to it, and I like this. He's got the pylon on the high ground, shield battery on the low ground, so he can try to hold the Nexus just in case. He feels like he's expecting that early aggression to come out of Gumiho. There is just 2 probes and a sentry. There's no Stalker, so what he doesn't want to do is sacrifice any probes holding the Reaper away. I think he has the wall, though, so he shouldn't really worry about the Reaper getting past him. Now, Gumiho last game did not know anything at all about what Astrea was doing, so this game he comes up and he just sees, okay, Cybernetics Core. What do we see? Twilight Council, baby. This is exactly what he did last game, too. It's not anything new. He went Blink into charge, but Gumiho killed, like, all of his probes with a Hellion drop. So, assuming that he doesn't get a big Hellion drop off this game, he should be okay. Don't mind me. That didn't just happen. You didn't just see that. So, Hallucinated Phoenix is going to come into the main base. Widowmine is going to detonate it. I've only had 2 sips of my coffee, guys, okay? That's the first time I think I've ever accidentally hit pause during a cast. I think it's literally a first for me. I love you. If you forgive me, I will, I'll never do it again. Does that count? Is that fair? So he kind of wastes the Widowmine, but it's not like he dragged Friendly Fire over his units or anything. So I think he should still be fine. Still load up the mine, still go for the drop. But Astrea's Blink is halfway done. We do have Stalkers by the 3rd base. We have a Stalker and a Sentry in the natural. This Pylon, the only warp-in space in the natural that he has, is not speed. It's not a speedy warp-up. That's a very slow warp-in. The mine drop is going to head towards the main base, though. Blink still about 40 seconds away. And does Astrea know? He's going to start to fan out towards the edge. He gets the alert. The Hellion Reaper headed towards the natural, but will he be able to catch the drop in the main base? Probes are on the run. Mines burrow. He's going to get 1. Nah, just two workers. Will save 2 of the mines and leave 1 of them behind. Sentry Force Field will help kill the Reaper. 1 Hellion does not get away without, well, almost being completely destroyed. Almost completely destroyed. This medevac is just going to chill here forever now. That's the correct way to use this. The Protoss will not want to make another pylon or a cannon or anything, because that medevac can also just fly home. But until he knows for a fact that it's gone or that he doesn't have to worry about the mines, he must live in unadulterated terror. I actually don't think there's a forge on the map. Astrea playing with a little bit more of a... I was almost going to say gateway heavy style, but as he starts charge, but he does go into the Immortal and the Robo Bay. Although we've seen a lot more Protoss players going for observer speed earlier in games, recognizing that value of vision, map control is always going to be very, very helpful. Gumiho has a spotter depot in front of his natural, and it will spot the Stalkers and die. You just don't want to make it too easy for them to walk up and blink. So that's why you leave some stuff behind. Mine drop's going to come back in. Oh, just barely shuts that one down. If that mine had been able to burrow. The only observer is in Gumiho's base, so... It would have revealed itself after shooting, but it probably would have been able to get the shot off, yeah. Guy in chat says that depot was 1 day from retirement. I cry every time. Literally. I have to watch the other guys every time I see a depot die like that. It reminds me of the opening. So here's where we talked about the 3 Stalker poke last game. Now, if you have the 4 Stalkers, you can one-shot the Marines. Of course, the big play is that you're trying to blink back as those shots come your way. You're trying to bait out the stims. And it looks like he actually does get a little bit of a kill there. The rest of the Stalkers continuing to retreat. Now, the rest of Astrea's army rallies up. We do not have Colossus range yet, but it doesn't matter because it's going to get Interference Matricide. It's kind of ridiculous how long that ability lasts, huh? 11 seconds of shutdown. And now he's going to try and siege underneath the Cybernetics Core position. Guardian Shield will get popped. He has another Interference Matrix for the Colossus if he wants to go for it, and he will. So now it's just Gateway units versus Bio, but the second Colossus is showing up. Meanwhile, Concussive Shells is about to finish, but more importantly, Colossus Range is about to finish. And this is that awkward part now where StarCraft casters all have to question now whether or not they're playing on the real version of the game or not. As I know the G8 tournament was played on a mod, so the Colossus range in that event was 9 with range. But I think most other tournaments in the ladder are still have the 10 range Colossus. So it's a little bit awkward. It's so weird that we live in a world now where tournaments are no longer playing the same version of the game as each other. I really never thought that would happen. Like, I just thought maybe we'd have less events, but now that we literally have different rule sets for different tournaments is kind of nuts. It's kind of crazy to think about. So, third base is being built on location. There are a lot of gateway units trying to get in the way of that, but Gumiho's going to try and catch the reinforcements headed to that position. There's still a few zealots on the top side. I don't think it's really enough to sandwich him. Should just be some free little snack for the Marine Marauder force. Yeah, the tournament mod it's called, right? I saw somebody on Twitter made a special mod that patched the Colossus range and basically nothing else. I think maybe the interceptor bug. I know they played the big tournament on that. Or I guess the easiest way to validate whether even that statement is true, because I was told that it was played on that mod, but I think they released the replays for that event too, so they should have the mod data in there. Anybody should be able to just look at it and see. Unless the guy on Reddit that said the replays are out just posted a link to a virus instead, which I guess is also entirely possible. I have not clicked on it myself. So, Astrea, pylons out on the map. He's feeling a lot better than game one. Let's face it, guys. He did not lose all of his probes to the mine drop. He did not lose all of his probes to a Hellion drop. He's been a lot more competitive this game, and we're seeing the Colossus be very useful here. They do have that full range, at least in this game, as we are playing on the live version of it. Gumiho takes what feels like one of the latest third bases possible, but for Astrea, he's not on at fourth base either. So he's not really super far ahead economically anymore, so I think that's why he's feeling the pressure to try and do something. His army's kind of getting pulled around, it seems. I think he wanted to maybe get that zealot, but there's a lot of vision for sure. Actually, let's zoom out. You see he's got the zealot on the top, observer kind of cover in the middle, army's heading towards the south side. It would be very difficult to get around this if you're Gumiho. So Stalkers will try to poke from the north, forces a stim, immediately blinks back, and splits a few zealots off to the west side. This Marine's going to go right down the middle and miss everything. Pretty big concave, though. Guardian Shield gets popped. There is the Ghost EMP. He's coming. Those Zealots did end up trying to get the counterattack damage done, but they get snipped. Mr. Ghosty Boy snipes. And Astrea's going to dive onto Gumiho's army. He does not really have a lot of Vikings here. He does get the anti-armor missile across the entire Protoss force. So that just takes away 2 armor off of the regular armor and the shield. So they do a little bit of bonus damage to the units affected by that. He's also kind of choked up, so a little bit easier to get the concave for Gumiho. That's going to allow him to take that base down, and now he's going to try to just trade the rest of his army out, focusing down the disruptors. He gets one of them, and maybe a Colossus. Maybe. Okay, 1 Colossus. There was a second disruptor that was very low, and a third one that was even still a little bit lower, and a huge Zealot counterattack came by one more time, but looks like Gumiho was ready for it. He drops a couple of scans, and he's basically recognizing, okay, you don't have any gas on your third. You're just now taking your 4th base. Okay, because he destroyed this one. This could have been the 5th base, but it was taken around the same time that this base was getting annihilated. So Gumiho tries to destroy 1 base. Astrea tries to rebuild 2 at the same time to compensate. There is an observer that can kind of see everything happening at the front of Gumiho's infrastructure, though. He sees extra racks have been built in front of the natural. He also sees the 4th command center is going to land, and the army is coming up for Astrea. He is interested in a battle. He's going to target down a couple of the ghosts. Disruptor shots actually go right for the Marauders. Gets another ghost. So no more EMP. Those Widow Mines are a little bit too far, and Gumiho's just going to tap out. Astrea ties the series 1-1. Very nicely done. Okay. So this is why. This is somebody was like, Nate, you got to watch this match. This is the one that you got to see. It's your boy Gumiho. It's your boy Astrea. And obviously going to game number 3 kind of says everything that we need to know about this series. Clearly we are on a good path. Clearly we are on a good path with this matchup. Let's find out how it ends, huh? Let's find out how it ends. In the top right, we have the blue Terran player. He is Gumiho. And in the bottom left, we have the red Protoss, Astrea. And now I'd like to, this is a good time to remind you all, of course, these replays are from the Korean Star League, which is played every week. I think it's like Friday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific time is when they start, so a little bit close to midnight EST. Not Nate's regular hours, but I'm happy to be doing the casts over here as well. Even after the fact, there's still some great games of StarCraft that people deserve to see. Players are out here giving it their all, so Astrea is going to go for a probe scout this game, and that's very important because Gumiho is cheesing him. We have a barracks being built on Ancient Cistern right outside the bottom of that main base cliff in Astrea's base. So he will have Reapers coming towards him very quickly. I would be shocked if Gumiho built a tech lab and tried to do proxy Marauder, but he is Gumiho, so maybe he would do that, but off of one barracks, this doesn't seem very likely. So Astrea comes in and he sees you have 2 gas geysers, no barracks, and the main base is pretty big, so he's thinking to himself, maybe I'm getting faked out, maybe I just have to check behind the mineral line. He'll send the probe everywhere, he will start his Nexus, but most importantly, he went Cybernetics Core before Nexus. So there is a Reaper on the way. But this isn't the Nexus then Cybercore instantly lose to the Proxy Reaper build. That's not what this is, thankfully. He's even going to get a Zealot out. He's even going to get out the Zealot. Chrono boost the Zealot. He just doesn't want the Reaper to be able to do anything. You can micro around the Zealot with the Reaper, but that's kind of the point, is that it takes a little bit of effort. And by takes a little bit of effort, I mean it takes significantly more effort to kill probes when there is a Zealot chasing you as well than it does when it's just the probes themselves. So that buys a little bit of time. He's going to lose 1 probe to the proxy. Meanwhile, his probe is still alive in Gumiho's base. He just put it on patrol, which is adorable. And, okay, I wasn't sure if that Reaper was about to die at the front of the natural. The Stalker came out. Gumiho's going to build a 3rd Reaper. He has 2 right now. Starts the natural expansion back home. But he's got 2 Reapers, a 3rd coming in. Factory with the Hellion on the way. No starport, so to speak. So this is, he can still go back in pretty quickly at any point this game. I think even with just 3 Reapers, 3 Reapers is enough to 2-shot a probe if there's no shield battery. So he might be thinking Hellion running the natural, Reapers jump into the main base. Or maybe he even tries to trade out against the Zealot Stalker midfield. It can be a little bit difficult, of course, if the Zealot is able to force the engagement. But we're at a total of... Oh, is he going to cut him off headed home? Is that the plan? I think that's a free Stalker if he went for it. Free Stalker. Oh, maybe the one in the natural is free. No, it's not. Did you guys seriously think that free lunches were going to become a thing just because of this one game of StarCraft? He does kill the Stalker, but he loses a Reaper and a Hellion. So just 1 Reaper left. 1 Reaper left for Gumiho. He does make another one from the barracks outside the base. So he's still trying to be annoying. Grenade blasts the Stalker away. And now we have Gumiho inside the main. There's a shield battery, though. So he's like, okay, I'm going to see the barracks. Or sees the gateway in production, and he's just going to dip. He steps back. Thank you, Beer Obsolete, for the support. Thank you so much. And Gumiho now finally establishing his natural. You guys see the trend that we talked about at the beginning of this series? This is how Terran players do it. You just gotta wallop them. You bring a ton of aggression. If you let the Protoss chill, things can get a little bit dicey, especially on these big maps. Look at the way Astrea is spreading out for vision. Has the pylons on the edge of his base. He doesn't want to get caught off guard by anything coming through the corner of the map. So this will give him plenty of time to react to anything that Gumiho does, but he's just floating his barracks home. He's floating his barracks home. I don't think the Ancient Cistern in Game 3 against Astrea is where he tries to go mech. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, which means that having to fly that barracks all the way back kind of delays his setup. Because obviously if it was at home and he had the second racks, he could already be researching stim, but now it's gonna be a little bit slower than that. I think that Starport building a tech lab is actually for, I think that might be for stim. I think he might just lift that and move it. He's gonna make a Raven. Okay. I like that too. I think getting a Raven versus Protoss is never a bad thing, since he has the Cyclone especially. I just wasn't sure how fast he was trying to get back to stim, because that barracks was arriving around the same time that tech lab finished. Stalker is gonna maybe get the Cyclone. No! Don't go to the corner. There's no way out. There's no way out of the corner. Oh, he's gonna actually get a probe, though, by the third. So this Stalker, he's just baiting him. 1 HP. The 1 HP Cyclone baiting the Stalkers all the way across the map. The Reapers will finally die. They had a good run. Drops a grenade on his body. He's running the Martyrdom perk. So he makes the Raven and then he does the swap. Okay. That was kind of my concern, but I suppose he had the other barracks that he was building at home, so he starts his stim and combat shield at the same time. And this is that phase of the game where the Terran player is generally just going to be very defensive. Until you have stim, until you have medevacs, leaving your base with bio is not really possible. The siege tanks can do a lot to defend. The Cyclone and the Raven get the Observer. So I think if you're going to make the Cyclone, then the Raven is fine. I don't really like the Raven with just bio, though, because it makes... I think it's like a bad habit reinforcement where you'll think you can get that Observer because the Raven's revealing it, and then you forget that Marine's at 5 range, and you stim, and you don't get the Observer, and then the Observer flies away, and your scan ends, or your Raven dies, and you're just like, that hurts. Or you just chase it too far because you think you're going to get it, and then the Raven dies. Yeah, that's horrible. So what's Astrea up to? High Templar, Psionic Storm, he's getting charge. No upgrades still. If there was something that we could probably point out as something to keep in mind when playing against Astrea or watching him, where's the Forge? Where are the Forges? The Forge does not exist. There's no Forge, no cannons. A paltry array of batteries, but not really a significant amount. Look, he's setting up the flank. He's going to walk into this trap. This Templar already behind him. The Raven drops the 2 turrets on the front, but the Immortal doesn't care about that. The Storm from behind is the real kicker. And Gumiho just gets absolutely walloped. Nothing doing there. He traded a couple of bio units for a shield battery. He traded a couple bio units for a shield battery, but not really anything else happening there for him. And his Raven energy, I suppose. He did not lose the Raven. But Gumiho is going to need to make a nice defense here. That's a lot of Zealots. That's a lot of Psystorm available. I think he's got 2. He's got 2 with the 3rd soon coming. So what does Gumiho do? He starts up his Ghost Academy. We know that Gumiho is not really the mass Viking, mass Liberator kind of Terran versus Protoss player. We've seen some EMPs from him, even today. But we haven't seen a lot. We haven't seen a lot of Vikings. We haven't seen a lot of Ghosts. We haven't seen any Liberators from him. He just doesn't really like trying to force that traditional late-game TVP standard that we have now. He prefers to hold it to Marine, Marauders, Medevacs, and just fighting. But that's a tough thing to do. Once that Storm comes into play, you're going to need the EMPs. And then once you have a lot of Ghosts in your army, it starts to slow down a little bit. And those big maps, you're trying to move around, you got to be really careful. Astrea We talk about the good things that he does and the vision that he's maintained. A lot of his outer edge pylons were destroyed earlier, but that's supposed to give you that heads up in case the drop comes by. As a result, even though Gumiho has cleaned up the spotters, he hasn't actually tried to drop him either. Looks like a Zealot's going to get eaten by that peripheral Widowmine. But he hasn't exactly put himself in a bad position. He's not overextending. He's not overcommitting. He says, look, Gumiho's on 3 bases. I'm on 4, going up to 4. And Gumiho tried to go up to 4 bases, then I'll take my 5th. And we'll just et cetera, this one. Some Protoss in the late game will make the switch to be a little more Stargate oriented if they think that the Terran's army is too well rounded. It's one of like the worst traps you can fall into. You end up having like 20 Marauders and 10 Medivacs, and then your opponent rolls up on you with a bunch of carriers, and you realize that even if you make nothing other than Marines, you actually can't make enough to kill the carriers until all of your other units are dead. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. I don't know that that's where we're going this game, but he's going to get his Raven feedback. And now, EMPs the Prism, gets the feedback on the Ghost. But he's making 2 Colossi at a time. That said, there is another push coming in from the bottom. We have 1 Ghost, Widowmine going up to cover the flank of the position that he wants to take. 1 Stalker, 2 popped, continues to kite. EMP on the Zealots, but there might be just a little bit too many of them. Siege Tank cannot hold against, well, as the Sensor Tower held the Colossus for a minute there. Weirdly enough, the Sensor Tower bought him more time than anything else he did on that defense. And maybe this will buy Gumiho more time as he is continuing to bring that pressure with his army. Forces the cancel on that 5th base. He cannot stand and fight, though, as Storm is on its way. He sees the clouds. The storm clouds in the distance. And he runs. Because what else are you going to do? Because maybe I'll spread out on top of the ramp if he chases me. And it's like, nah, it's not worth it, bro. Both players with multiple split units of their army out on the map. So Gumiho takes his 4th now that the 5th is going up for Astrea. And Astrea just has so much money. He has so much money. He's building it's a very inexpensive army composition. It's got 20 Zealots. I say inexpensive, but Zealots are about as cheap as it really gets. Even sentries cost 100 gas. That's a lot. That's a lot of cheddar. The 4 Colossi that he has with his army, though, that's probably what makes it so tough. You have all these Zealots to meet shield, and you just want to try and force that perfect, beautiful engagement where the Colossi can all spread out and fire. Ideally not on a Sensor Tower, but the Terran will have a very tough time engaging into that. Widowmine is going to drag some splash over the gateway ball. Astrea getting cleaned up on the north central side of the map. So his army is kind of getting flanked. And by flanked, I mean it's a backstab. He's running over towards that west side 4th, which will be recalled to by the Colossi. So he can't necessarily engage that army. He sees a splintered Protoss force. But at the same time, he doesn't want to dive onto the disruptors, and I can't blame him. Cannot blame him whatsoever. Those disruptors are absolutely terrifying. We have 4 Ghosts on the bottom. Could try to land some EMPs to help break down the photon cannon. That's what he does. And he knows he needs to get some damage done. He can lift a lot of this army up into the Medivacs while Astrea comes over to deal with this. There's several High Templar with a lot of energy. First Storm on the north side. Big Zealot Warband on the left side. And that's it. Nexus is down. Everybody's just got to load up and get the hell out of Dodge. He's still trading out against the Zealots. It looks like that's what he wanted to do. Just take out as much as he could before his army was obliterated. There's only 8 Stalkers. I thought he could have maybe tried to scoot a few of those Marines and Marauders over to the main base, but trading out completely. I sort of see it. I think even if just 1 Medivac made it, maybe buy time. Maybe buy yourself another 20, 30 seconds. We do have Liberator range on the way, so Gumiho was waiting for me to analyze his behavior in this series, and then he wanted me to tell you that he was not going to make a bunch of Liberators. And, of course, the moment that I say that, now he's making a bunch of Liberators. He's getting +2 ship weapons and advanced ballistics. That is the way to do it, though. Protoss kind of has to go Stargate once Liberator range is in play. At least in the old maps. On these maps, I don't think Liberators can really, like, Giga Siege a Protoss as badly as other ones. Maybe not Ancient Cistern. You have a lot of space behind the mineral lines to put a cannon or stalkers, so you need a lot of space for Liberators to be as annoying as usual. But they're still very strong anti-engagement. You just can't push into this, so that allows the Vikings to step up. They can do their jobs a little bit better. And Gumiho just trying to trade out a little bit for those stalkers. We know stalkers are tremendously expensive. Looks like he's going to tag another disruptor. And Astrea is starting to have some struggles. It seems like he's having a tough time breaking through this. High Templar is going to get killed with 68 energy, so just barely not enough for another storm. And as Gumiho moves this command center towards the top side, what we're seeing now, Astrea, he has a couple zealots left over. He has the vision to see it. There's not really anything left at this planetary. Gumiho has some bio rallying there, but maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see Astrea just do a big push onto this position. 2 ghosts, 2 EMPs across center mass could be devastating. A siege tank on the disruptors could do a lot, but it's just 1 tank. The bottom time for the Liberators, though. And again, you just don't ever want to push into +2 Liberators when they're pre-siege like this. They 2-shot stalkers and pretty much everything else, honestly. I think they might 1-shot the High Templar now, right? Yeah, they do 85 damage, so I think that High Templar is just super dead if he steps into range, since most units will prioritize spellcasters that are in range if they can. Interestingly enough, takes away the sensor tower there. Liberator's not trying to get too close. I thought he might be able to zone a little more of that space out, but he doesn't want to risk it. Feels really weird to see a Raven this late into a TVP, though. That Raven almost always gets sacrificed doing something for the greater good. I think you can cut this ramp off, and then you want to completely zone this space out. I don't know about unsieging all of them. You got to be expecting that the big fight is going to start the moment that they think that they can get underneath those libs. And again, it's also just 2 armies. We've just had 2 armies in a standoff on multiple different parts of the map throughout the entire game. But Gumiho's been able to get that north base set up. Even as the Liberator here, I think maybe you put 2 more, just cut this ramp, just cut that off, get the rest of the Vespine, maybe make the big battlecruiser transition, 4 more starports on the way. That's what I'd like to see. On the Protoss side of things, Stargates are continuing to be added. We had the fleet beacon made quite a while ago. He's been getting air upgrades, but he's not been building any units yet. He has not made any Stargate units yet. I was thinking maybe an Oracle first, but you don't want Gumiho to know that you're transitioning. Finally gets that observer outside of his base. Liberators go to cut off that side. Is the Colossi gonna come from the west? It's so weird. The Liberators are zoning out the area that his army's playing in, but not really where the enemy is. So he's tiptoeing around a few no-fly zones, but it's not anything that can force a fight or an advantageous engagement of any kind yet. Gumiho's gonna take the northwest corner base. There we go. Battlecruisers, ladies and gentlemen. I always know when somebody tells me I gotta cast a match, it's because there's probably battlecruisers involved at some point. Will we get there? Will we get to the Giga Cruiser scenario? Maybe. Who can say? Who can really say? Who can know these things? Yamato is coming in though, +1 armor. And here's the most interesting thing about this situation. Sometimes you get Tempests to try and break people that are turtling or to deal with Liberators, but sometimes you get Carriers when you want to just kill the other guy. The Carriers are going to have +3 attack. The Battlecruisers will have, at best, +1 armor. So this is one of those situations where I will usually say Battlecruisers beat Carriers 99% of the time. But if there's a lot of Carriers and they have a huge upgrade advantage, then the Interceptors can punch through that Battlecruiser plating. And if that happens, then yes, you're on a one-way ticket to Funky Town. And I'm not talking about the fun place. I'm talking about the Detroit Greyhound station. All right? I've been there. Okay? You don't want to go there. You don't ever want to be there. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you see that you've awoken in front of that building, I would tell you to run. So that corner base does get picked off. We already knew this. There's 2 armies for each player moving around, even though they're not both playing Terran. Throws some Disruptor Discs, gets almost a couple of the Ghosts. Even then, another little snipe by the Stalkers. Not able to finish it off, though. These two playing pretty evenly matched. Ancient Cistern's a hard map to end games on. It's a very difficult map to end games on, just because it is so unbelievably huge. I think this is one of the absolute biggest maps we've ever had in StarCraft as far as number of bases and just amount of usable map space. There's almost no unpathable terrain in the middle of the map. It's all cliffs and ramps and stuff, but they're all big. There's not a lot of giant doodads blocking your way. It's just a few air blockers, and that's pretty much it. So that's what enables both of them to just run around all these different places without running into each other. We just have huge amounts of space to work with, so that's how we get into these games. A nice long game 3. But I'm okay. I'm okay with it. I won't pretend to be a good caster or anything and say that like it's been a great game, because I think it's obvious that it has been a pretty good game. Maybe it's a little stalematey, but I think that's more on the map than anything else. But I'm going to cast all my bias aside to say that I'm happy no matter what because of my bias. Because we've got big battlecruisers on the map. Now, this is where it gets tricky. +3-1 BCs against +3 carriers. Yeah, I was going to say. This is not the scenario where the battlecruisers are actually that good. So he loses a BC, which costs more than a command center. And that's to save the command center. So this is where it gets tricky, because now you've shown your hand. I think Astrea realizes that with the upgrade advantage, he doesn't have to worry about the battlecruisers yet, but he's thinking about Gumiho continuing to upgrade his BCs. And he knows that if he ends up in a later engagement against like 3-3 BCs versus 3-3 carriers, the battlecruisers are going to win that fight 99% of the time. Unless you've got like 10 carriers versus 3 battlecruisers. But if you're anywhere similar numbers, the BCs will wreck you once they have that plating. So that's why he's going into the Tempest. 2 of his Stargates are exposed, though. That is a huge shutdown for Gumiho. We have 6 battlecruisers on the Stargates. Now, Astrea cannot make the one unit that is really, really good against BCs. Of course, we've already talked about why the carriers will still be useful for a little bit longer, but he decides he's just going to warp over to the right, shut down this Stalker, and fix up another base of his own. But Astrea took that bottom right corner. Look at this. Field of Dreams. So many static defense. He's got like, what is this, 2,000 minerals of static D? He's paying. He's paying out. When they tell you they don't have money to restructure your contract, just remember to tell Astrea that his corner base had 9 photon cannons and 2 shield batteries. Okay? You say my raise comes from one of those photon cannons, okay? It was a little excessive. Then Astrea sends you home with bad news. Yeah, those battlecruisers are struggling a little bit. It's just that upgrade discrepancy is something that can't really be stated enough. Even with +2 armor done, still being an upgrade behind against carriers is terrible for the BCs. He can't really force the engagement yet. He is still maxed out. He's going to go for a huge counterattack with the bio, and I actually love this. Just force him to recall straight to the main base, buy as much time as you possibly can, even EMPs the main base Nexus specifically so he can't recall to it, then we'd love to see that. He actually EMP'd the natural Nexus as well, so he could recall to his third base. But this is what the Terran wants. He really wants Astrea to just recall. And Astrea says, instead, I'm gonna base trade you. We're gonna kill some of your orbital commands. These guys, you know, they're close to 600 minerals apiece. They're very expensive, so killing the orbitals is still a good deal. And the tech inside the main base is gonna get cleared out, but he's got so much everywhere else. Yeah, he's just going to start more Stargates in the bottom right corner, add a bunch of gateways on. I'd love to see a backup Cybercore. I would love to see a backup Cybercore. The battlecruisers actually teleport in to try and give the what little aid they can to help close it out. So what are the numbers? 2 carrier. Oh, yeah, we're down to 2 carriers and no Tempest. Yeah, it looks like Gumiho's got this. I do not know how Astrea... I don't know how Astrea turns it around, having lost everything. Because Gumiho still has his defense on the north. He's got a lot of planetaries. Wow, that's actually pretty sick. You know what? Now I believe. I understand how you could do it, Astrea. I understand now. Never mind. Take it all back. Unfortunately, Gumiho is still going to be cruising on over after school. Okay, he's bringing the voluntary bonus homework. That's right. He said he has aspirations or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't know what kind of doctor diagnoses that, but there is also a lone immortal, so he's got that going for him, which is nice. He's just running. He's just out there by himself. Nobody told him where to go. He went through the onboarding process. He filled out the portal information on the website. He gets his paycheck, but nobody ever actually told him what to do. So Gumiho's going to continue to drag these battlecruisers across the Protoss base. That is a lot of Stargates in the bottom right. He absolutely cannot... You can't just let Astrea dump this huge bank he's built into mass Tempest. Oh, goodness. Okay, so he's going to rejoin. So he sends his army to the top left. He wants to kill everything that the bio units are scared of. I actually love this play. I love this play because now it's just the Marines, the Marauders, and the Ghosts against the air units. And oh, there's no obs? He gets all the High Templar. He gets all of them. There's no observers. There's just one. It's outside of his base. So his base gets ransacked. He does still have the Stargates. He really just needs to make a few more pylons so that he can actually max out. His only observer is sieged up outside the other base, though. So I do think that makes it kind of tricky. There is a Nexus on the left. I really don't think this ever gets used, but more power to you. Gumiho has created a Venn diagram of sensor towers, by the way. He's an artist. I think him keeping his production intact is the biggest thing, because Gumiho is he's very broke. He is maxed out, but he would not have been able to spend that money maxing out if he lost as much as Astrea did. So this game is still very awkward because Astrea actually still has a lot of money, and his army is really good. Look how low all these Marines are. It's about 2 hits away from dying to everything. Even with these EMPs from the Ghosts, the Marines are all one shot from dying. The only answer to this would just have to be nothing but Ghosts and Marines, I think. The battlecruisers are still good against the carriers, so he's going to try and end it right now. Just send everything into that base. He's going to take a few of the Tempest out and try and pulling the health bars away so you can actually see the fight. He's got a full surround. The Liberators are hitting from the north. They don't really do a lot of damage to air units, but once the carriers are gone, the Marines are not afraid of Tempest. Panic DT gets warped in behind. I don't think it's going to be enough. Astrea just barely not able to get out that next wave. If you add 3 carriers to this, defense, I think that it becomes an incredibly hard hold. And Astrea might even turn it around there. But I don't even know what to say. Astrea still has so much money. I want to count him out, but he has Stargates. He's got a carrier building. He still has DT. He still has Blink on the DT. And he does still have some Tempest and carriers. Gumiho, for everything that's happened, he's still just about mining one-ish base, and he's just pumping out nothing but Marines, which I think should be enough. I really do. I think that should be plenty. But Astrea does finally have some income off that west side base, so he's starting to pull in a couple of bucks too. Oh, random Widow Mines. Yeah, random mines. There are no observers again, right? Or where is it? Where is it? Okay, it's back with the carrier. I know everybody watching was terrified about that observer. We've been following him since the robotics facility was destroyed about 8 minutes ago. Gets a Void Ray, gets 2. It's panic mode for Astrea. Again, he has money, but it feels like he needs to force it because Gumiho has bases. Does he, though? Does he need to force it? He doesn't have the fleet beacon yet. That's the biggest problem. And he's going to have to recall in 10 seconds when he has the energy for it. So I guess his play here is try to kill this command center, recall to the bottom right, or recall... I know he can't get it out. 50 energy, right on schedule, but I think it's too late. He's going to try and kill this orbital. There's still 3 more. But Astrea has 3,000 minerals and 3,000 gas. So the game doesn't have to be over. He could just rebuild here. Although I would have liked to see him try and get the fleet beacon over here a little earlier, because now he's literally starting over from square one. I even like the pylon in the corner here, anticipating a base trade. This is the last real mining base of Gumiho's. It's kind of low on resources. I would love to see Astrea go for it. Really, you just need to keep this base alive. This is it. This is your last stand. Maybe get a bunch of cannons and batteries with this. I don't know. He doesn't have that much money. You know, he's got a little bank, but it's this thing called cash flow. You know, it's like you might have money today, but is money coming in that if you were to spend this, you would not run out soon? You know, like that's the problem. And Gumiho, well, we know mules exist, so Terrans are never out of cash flow. I do think this is the correct maneuver, though. Get the batteries, supplement this, make it as hard as possible to push through. The Gumiho is going to just push up. He has a lot of Marines. Stim straight forward. Focuses down a couple of the batteries. Interceptors are dying. Left, right, and center. All of the interceptors are dead, and Gumiho pushes through. GG. Well played. Gumiho takes the 2-1 in what was a banger TVP. Thanks for watching.